Music is a powerful force, but when combined with certain dangerous drugs, could it form a dark, deadly occult cocktail?
Hello everyone. Today we're talking about the occultism, I guess that's the right word for it, behind the 27 Club of all the famous musicians. And you guys have probably heard about this. I'm only going to touch on it briefly. If you haven't, you'll still understand, but for those of you who have. But we're mainly talking about the deeper occult meaning behind this whole phenomenon, not it itself. If you guys are new, do subscribe and check out our spooky playlists. I'm Morticia.
I'm Gomez.
And we are here to talk to you about this whole thing and all that it could imply, which is pretty scary. And we have a master numerologist on the scene who has written down all the birth and death dates, who's going to analyze that for us. And numerology is a very interesting science. Numbers tell a lot about a person. And I'm pretty skeptical until I see it, and it is very accurate when done by the right person with the right intuition and understanding, which matters a lot when people see fake things and go, oh, I don't believe in it just because somebody tried to do it and it wasn't accurate for them. It has to be the right person applying the right skill and an understanding of what they're doing. But anyway, we are talking about the 27 Club, which involves 7 people now so far. There'll probably be more, I'm sure. But the 27 Club is like musicians who have died at the age of 27 who were very talented and famous or became really famous later. The first member, the founder of the 27 Club, died in the 1930s. His name was Robert Johnson. He was 27 because you have to be to get into the club, and I think he was the most important, obviously, because he started it. He wasn't amazingly talented for most of his life, and then he went away for 6 months, kind of fell off the face of the earth, and came back and was brilliant. And that's where the metaphysical aspect comes in. Some people believe he sold his soul to the devil to get this power. If one doesn't really hold with particularly like devils, he did something. He opened something. We could just theorize something paranormal or metaphysical that opened him and gave him this ability. But unfortunately, I think just like even on a smaller scale using a Ouija board or something, when you invite unknowns into your life, entities, you never know what you're going to get in return. And it seems like he and these others got something that they weren't counting on. I'm not saying all these singers sold their soul to the devil. Before you comment that that's BS, I am not saying that. Just go with us. We're talking general metaphysics, not God and the devil. I don't think anybody sold their soul. But he did something, and he suddenly got this talent, and then soon after he died of a mishap. Some say he was poisoned. Some think he got syphilis because he got around. Regardless, he died at 27, and before that he had a very inexplicable talent that he did not have before. So there is something paranormal going on there, and some think that he was kind of hinting at this at his song Crossroads, and I can link that below for you. I'm going to link a sample of each of the singers below just because. But he was singing, and he's kind of hinting that he asked God for help and he didn't get it, so maybe he says he's going down, so it could indicate that he's going elsewhere. And even if we don't believe in, if you do believe in God and the devil, that's fine, go with that. If you don't, he believed in it, that he did, and let's say he called upon good forces, didn't feel like he got the help he needed fast enough, and opened himself to something else. There are darker entities out there, and there's more than one of them, so I mean, you don't have to call it the devil. It could be anything, but they will come in and they will use the control if you're not controlling your own life. And basically, our theory is hinged around control and what drugs and drink and all do when they are taken by certain people who are unhappy. You're giving away that control. And when you give away your control, someone else is going to take it. And they might even let you enjoy that for a while before they take their toll. And we're talking about entities and spirits when I say someone else. But basically, it's a situation of what kind of people really become addicted to drugs. Sometimes it's just people that want to have a good time and mess up. Mostly it's unhappy people, and they're unhappy for reasons. And when you're not happy and you're not trying to change your life, or you don't believe you can, which is always untrue. It's hard to change, but we can always do it. We can pinpoint where the issue is. But I'm not trying to get into all that. I just want to talk about the metaphysics of the 27 Club. But the point is, you are in a situation, if you're like one of these musicians, where you don't feel like you have control, so then you kind of turn to a drug to give you a different feeling, but you're still not getting control, and you never know what you're opened up to, and I'm going to let our numerologist talk about that soon. But real quick, the other members, this guy started it. Death was kind of mysterious. We're guessing either syphilis or poison, but they did an autopsy back then. He was just found on the side of the road dead, so that was that. And then you get Brian Jones from the Rolling Stones. 4 of these in the 27 Club became members, dropping like flies from 1969 to 1971. You got Brian Jones, who was the founder of the Rolling Stones, dies in his swimming pool, enlarged heart and liver from all his drug and alcohol use, but it was kind of considered a mishap or whatever when he died in the pool. They, you know, sketchy, they don't know. And he was really talented. He had a lot of personal demons again too. And then there is Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and then Jim Morrison. Then we ride it out to the 90s, 1990s, until we get more members of the club. And then we get Kurt Cobain, who was, again, troubled. And he has some things in common with Janis Joplin, bisexuality tendencies. I don't think bisexuality makes people want to join the 27 Club, but they were both kind of, I think, conflicted about it. And I think conflict is a very bad problem, which we can get into later, that can open the door to other things within one, that lets other people make decisions for us if we're not going to do it, or other entities, or both. But conflict is just kind of where you're stuck at a crossroads, going back to the Robert Johnson crossroads kind of thing. And again, if you don't move it yourself, somebody will move it for you. But anyway, so we've got 1990s, got Kurt Cobain, and then we skip to 2011, 12 for Amy Winehouse. Amy Winehouse was the newest member of the 27 Club. And with numerology, our master numerologist is actually Gomez. He has some hidden talents. So I had written down all the births and death dates and sent him like the Wikipedia of these people and said, hey, read this and see what connections you can get. And Gomez has treated people. He is also a 3rd level hypnotherapist, alchemical, and he has treated people for different mental issues. So, you know, he could understand by reading some about these people what they had going on, and I thought he would be an interesting discussion kind of person to talk about this whole 27 phenomena and the people that it affects. So what conclusions and thoughts do you have on this?
Well, going one by one, Robert Johnson. Of course, we would want to see how his numbers, his birth date, his death date, how they relate or diverge from the iconic number 27. So we would look for equivalence in either the 2, the 7, or the 9, and see what happens.
9, because 2 plus 7 of 27 makes 9.
Exactly. So in his case, his numbers strongly suggest 7 and 9. So he has 2 out of the 3 numbers we're looking for, 2, 7, and 9. In his case, well, 7 is generally the number of the seeker, somebody who looks for knowledge, and often knowledge and truth, they lead in the mystical direction. It has a strong feeling that he was one of those who decisively went in that mystical direction. Whether he intended to or not is a different matter, but his 7 suggests that he was looking for something that is greater than himself, something that is true, something that he can feel.
And he ran away from home as a kid, you know, so I think he did. He was like, I gotta get out of here, I gotta find more.
Well, that makes sense. The 9 also suggests sort of abandonment issues, and sometimes you get those from weaker family structure. Sometimes you are lacking something emotionally, psychologically. So in his case, it was probably the environment, the family atmosphere, the maybe partial poverty. It appears to be like they're all related here, and they prompted him to look for something greater. And that something greater might be, well, it feels like it could be some entity outside of himself, whatever name we would use for it. I guess the devil or not the devil, but I see why people would think that. because there is something greater that he was looking for, and that's something with strange powers that could change his life and probably did.
And there are a lot of, like, you know, the world, whether we're in human bodies or whether we're not, there's good and there's evil out there, there's neutral out there, whether, again, we're talking about humans or things that are not human. And so, again, you don't even have to be religious to know that there are very bad and very good entities out there that don't have bodies, too, that can decide to play. And all the devil is a word for evil. So, you know, it just depends on whatever term you want to use.
Yes. And then with Janis Joplin, we have a different number structure. Her birth numbers have to do with 2, 8, and 1. So the 2 is common with the 27. The other numbers are not. Overall, her numbers would suggest that she needed social approval, could at times experience social anxiety, the need to creatively express herself, and get stronger from the approval of others, and a lack of control. Substance abuse could often be an issue here, and I think it was for her.
Oh yeah, definitely. And she, that all that is accurate. I was really big into Janis Joplin as a teenager. Nobody knew who she was in high school. I had her picture on my notebook, and nobody knew who it was because obviously she was long dead. But yeah, I know a lot about her because I was all into her. I was an outcast. Can you believe it? And so I kind of really related to her, although she had it because of her looks and whatnot. And she wasn't the prettiest. She had a lot of acne, and she was overweight, and people were really mean to her because of that. And they were pretty hardcore. So what Gomez is saying is accurate. She didn't have social acceptance. She was very creative. She was a thinker. And thinkers, it's really cool that we think a lot, but sometimes we can get ourselves in trouble if we think in the wrong direction, you know? So, she was definitely very into that. And I think by the time she got the fame, when you were referring, Gomez, to her getting approval from others,
Yeah.
by the time she got it, again, we go back to what I was saying about conflict. I don't think she had it from herself enough. She wasn't comfortable in herself.
Yes.
Because by then she had already been beat down by others, and once it's done, it's like you have to really do work. It doesn't just fix itself. A lot of people think it just fixes itself, and that's why so many famous people are still unhappy. Oh, people love me now. I'm supposed to be okay, and I'm not. Oh, well, you know, you have to fix it in yourself even if other people love you, because the damage and the hurt was already done. And just because people love you now, it doesn't make the old hurts go away until you tell yourself that they were wrong and you're not bad, and you know, whatever you need to do to fix yourself with counseling or anything else. So I think the love she finally got didn't really register on the subconscious level where the damage had been done, and didn't really matter as much, and she probably still drew herself toward toxic people and situations as a result.
That makes perfect sense. And the same seems to apply to Brian Jones. He has precisely the same numbers as Janis, interestingly.
Yeah, they said he was shy. He could go from being shy to being more obnoxious. Maybe he would lash out when he wasn't feeling like he was accepted.
Yeah, that's part of the lesson of two. It's two polar opposites sometimes, and the behavior can switch between them drastically, depending on the mood and chemical balances and such. So it would make sense, especially again with substance abuse. It could probably change the system. So with Jimi Hendrix, we have a slightly different set of numbers now, but his is interesting enough, precisely the one we're looking for. It's 2, 7, and 9.
He had it all.
Yeah.
He had the 2, the 7, and the 9 when you combine them.
Yeah. So for him, the 7 also indicates that kind of a surge. The 2 implies that he would look for it in the social arena. The 9 would indicate that he also has certain instability in his family life, and because of that he is compensating for it by looking again for approval in others. He seems to have less of a control issue, less of the substance abuse problem. Perhaps it is either it's not to the same degree, or else he doesn't consider the problem, it doesn't bother him, it doesn't affect his functionality quite as much.
I don't think it affected his functionality as much as some of the others with performing and all, but he definitely had a problem and it killed him.
Yeah.
he OD'd on sleeping pills and whatnot. It was weird he took so many, but they didn't mention him being suicidal, and they don't really call it a suicide. Maybe he didn't realize he took that many, but he took like a ton of sleeping pills from his girlfriend or whatever. So, yeah, and he had said as a child that he was sexually abused by someone in uniform. He told her about it. So, I'm not saying that's why he did it, but if we're troubled and then we have conflicts within ourselves, and I'm not saying people who were abused or who have had bad family lives are destined to be open to evil forces. It's just that when we have any sort of imbalance inside, we have to do the work, or if we don't control ourselves, someone else or something else can and will, whether they're an abusive spouse or boyfriend or bad friends or bad entities that we let in because of what drugs do to one and where drugs take one.
Yes, that's very true. And Jim Morrison is next on our list, and he shares the same numbers as Janis and Brian Jones, again precisely to the point, 2, 8, and 1. So again he has control issues, and he has sensitivity issues, and he's using his sensitivity to express his needs, his inner self, but also maybe the outer realms that he's seeing.
Yeah, it's a lot of children see the paranormal and they don't realize even what they're seeing, and adults don't see the same thing, and then the kid starts to doubt themselves. Jim Morrison has a story that his family saw, a totally different story. It was a big deal when he was a kid. They were on a trip and he saw this accident on the road, and he saw, like, in his mind, a lot of hurt, bleeding Native Americans just laying out on the road, like just laying there, and it freaked him out, and he was crying and like freaking out. And his family, like his dad said, he just saw one Native American guy like crying and there was an accident, like, you know, he didn't think it was a big deal. They didn't stop to help, and you would think the parents would have stopped to help or try to do something if there were really like bodies on the road and stuff. And he didn't see the same thing that his son did. And his younger siblings, of course, were too young to know, and so they just said the way he tells it was always a lot bigger and a lot more dramatized than what his parents would tell. So I'm sure he did think he saw it. It impacted him in a way of what he saw opened him into things he didn't understand. And again, it's not just if you're open to seeing things that you will have these troubles or have bad entities take you over. It's just you have to direct it. If you don't direct that, hey, I have a gift and I need to use it, it will use you. I know a lot of troubled people that have psychic gifts and they do not use them, and they do abuse substance too much, and they are unhappy. I think because this power is kind of inside and it presses, and it probably makes them feel weird if it's not being used. Kind of like, I hate to sound weird, but like, you know, if you have to use the bathroom and you're trying to hold it and you're not comfortable.
That's a good analogy.
And then it might make it hard to do other stuff, like focus on a video, or like, no, I don't have to use the bathroom, I'm good. But you know what I mean? And this power is inside and it wants to be used, and it is there, and if you're not using it, it's going to turn on you. Kind of like if we want to say Harry Potter Obscurus, for those of you who watch the Fantastic Beasts movies, because a lot of fantasy stuff is based in true metaphysics, and it has some sort of grain of truth, just like legend and myth does, but it's going to come out in a different way than the Obscurus in Harry Potter. It's going to come out where you are you know, open to other things using you. You're a danger to yourself. You're not going to blow up the world, you know, but you're a danger to yourself if you don't use what you have and just go, I'm not crazy, and try to understand what's happening and use it. So it could be anything from abuse to depression to having a power inside that is being neglected. Maybe it was hard for him when other people didn't see it too, but it ended up using him.
And the next on our list is Kurt Cobain, and his numbers again match precisely the 27. It's 2, 7, and 9. And again, his family was unstable, so enough of his search was driven by trying to make up for something that he perceives as inappropriate, as wrong, as false for him, and he wants to correct it, and he wants to correct many wrongs because of that, in his own life, in social and political life. All of that is driven by that basic trauma, and possibly it also drives him to look for more. And again, the 7 is dominant in his numbers, which means that he is looking for something out there, something that can save him even if it is from himself, as the song says. So he is again matching the numbers of our people. But Amy Winehouse stands out. She is the one that stands out the most. Her numbers are 3, 5, and 8. She only shares the 8 with Jim Morrison and Brian Jones and Janis Joplin. So to a degree, maybe she has a slightly different path and energy. Maybe she is more laid back. She's all into self-expression. She's more prone to depression, more likely moodiness and things like that, and they could affect her performance, her enjoyment of life, and career and relationships. So all of that is again leads to number 8, which is again substance control to a degree. I think enough of them had that in common. That's pretty predictable.
What's interesting about Amy is she didn't appear, I'm not saying she didn't, but from what I could read and find in documentaries, she didn't have any childhood issues, even though her parents did divorce like Kurt Cobain's. It didn't say she had any childhood abuse or trauma. If she did, it was not where I could find it. If she did, it could fit with the others, but if she didn't, it was interesting, and right now we're going to assume she didn't because it is different from what we could find. So she's good. So what opened her, it seemed to go downhill for her. Her dad had said that she was really against drugs, and she didn't understand why people in the music industry had to take drugs. And it turns out that she got with a guy who was all into it and got her into it. So I mentioned earlier how conflict can cause an opening that will allow somebody else to take control if you don't want to, because conflict is a crossroads. It's like, I want to do this for this reason, but on the other hand, I want to do this over here. And usually until we change something or really do something about it, a conflict means you're never happy fully with either decision you make. So she went against her reasons for not wanting to take drugs. Those reasons probably didn't change, and she did it with this guy, and then it just got her really addicted because she was messing with the hard stuff. She was messing with crack and heroin, like the two big giant addictive things, as well as a lot of drinking and whatnot. And she died actually of a lot of drinking, like excessive. I think she had like 2 little and 1 big bottles of vodka, like way too much blood alcohol level, and it killed her. So I thought heroin had done it because she was really into heroin, but I checked and no, it was the alcohol. She had went to rehab for the heroin, so. But she was depressed a lot, and I guess that was after all the things she put herself through getting with the guys that were on drugs and stuff. So I'm sure there were some things that we didn't get to know about with her, but it seems to be about conflict, don't you think?
Yes, and it makes sense that she doesn't have as much of a family drama because she's like in the number 9 that usually goes with it. So again, that makes it different and suits what we know so far. And there are interesting facts, some of them big and small, about the intersections of their different paths at small points. Maybe they don't mean anything because famous people tend to know each other. Maybe they do. I just thought it was kind of interesting that I didn't realize, for example, that Jimi Hendrix family also went through Seattle, Washington in the past, just like Kurt Cobain, or that Jimi Hendrix was introduced directly by Brian Jones, who is also on our list, or that Janis and Kurt Cobain shared the inspiration of Lead Belly, which they probably share others too, but still interesting.
That is interesting, and probably because Amy liked the blues and jazz, she probably shared some of the older interests. And I knew about the connections of the 4 who died between 69 and 71, but not most of the ones that you just mentioned, Gomez, because they were between Kurt and then some of the older ones.
And then there's also the fact that Janis watched Jimmy at Woodstock, and Mama Cass watched Janis but also went to school with Jim Morrison. So all kinds of interesting direct connections.
They were at least around the same time period, but that is still interesting.
And then Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin had 16 days of difference, and numerologically speaking 16 is again 7, bringing us to our club number.
Where there's 7 so far.
Yeah. So just small connections here and there, and I guess there is something to that. They seem to be united by some kind of a common theme, and it's not just fame, it's not just depression, it's not just substance abuse, it's probably just the fact that they are all trying to be great, in a sense, to express the greatness, the truth that's out there, and sometimes it's just their truth, and sometimes it could also be maybe somebody else's. So, what do you guys think about it? Do you have any theories?
Yes, do share with us what you think. There are some people who don't think it means anything, and there was some research done that say that other rock stars have died at other years. Like, a lot of rock stars could have died at the age 25 or even 32, I saw online, so they don't think the 27 Club is a big deal, as in they, as in other researchers. But I haven't heard about the 25. And I haven't heard about the 32 until I actually looked. So I will state that there are other opinions, and that's it. But you hear about 27 a lot. And I was happy when Gomez and I both passed it. We made it! So that's cool. But, you know, it's the thing. And I do feel that there are dark entities out there. And I do know that if you don't control yourself, other things will, just from our own experiences, subtle and bigger. And I don't really have names for those entities, but if you do, that's cool. And yeah, do share your thoughts, and we hope you enjoyed this, and until next time,
Stay spooky, my friend.